Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win, by Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin. Picture this. The air is choking with smoke and confusion. Soot from burning tires, dust kicked up by tank treads, and powdered concrete from demolished buildings hangs thick in the early morning light over Ramadi, Iraq. This isn't some metaphorical fog of war. This is the real deal. And, cutting through it all, the unmistakable symphony of chaos. Machine gun fire rattling off, explosions echoing between buildings, voices shouting in panic. This was Jocko Willink's reality on his first major operation in the city. As a Navy SEAL commander, he'd trained for chaos. But this was total pandemonium. Radio chatter flooded in from all directions. American troops wounded, Iraqi soldiers killed, enemy fighters seemingly everywhere. Communications were breaking down. The situation was spiraling. And then, that sickening feeling in your gut when you know something is terribly, horribly wrong. He sprints toward a building where a vicious firefight is tearing through the morning. A Marine sergeant intercepts him, breathless. There's a group of enemy fighters holed up inside, putting up one hell of a fight. They've already killed an Iraqi soldier and wounded several more. U.S. forces have been hammering that building with everything in their arsenal. Heavy machine guns, rifles, and now there's an Abrams tank with its main gun trained on the structure, ready to turn it into rubble. An airstrike is minutes away from wiping out everyone inside. But something gnaws at Jocko. The location feels wrong. It's too close to where one of his own SEAL sniper team should be positioned. In all the mayhem, they hadn't confirmed their exact location. He has to check. Ignoring warnings that it's essentially suicide, he and his senior enlisted SEAL push toward the building everyone thinks is crawling with enemies. He kicks open the compound door and finds himself staring face to face with one of his own SEALs. The enemy they were seconds away from obliterating was them. In the confusion, two friendly forces had mistaken each other for the enemy. Blue on blue. Friendly fire. The absolute worst nightmare in combat. One of his men was wounded. An Iraqi ally was dead. And it all happened on his watch. What happens in the aftermath of this horrific mistake holds the key to understanding one of the most powerful leadership principles ever articulated. It's a principle forged in the furnace of war by two remarkable Navy SEAL officers, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, during the Battle of Ramadi, one of the most brutal fights in modern military history. Their book, Extreme Ownership, has sold millions of copies and transformed businesses, teams, and lives across the globe. Here's what I promise you. By the end of our time together, you'll understand the simple, profound, and life-altering mindset that allows a leader to transform failure into victory, blame into solutions, and chaos into clarity. This isn't just about leadership on the battlefield. It's about leadership in your life. And it starts with one deceptively simple idea. So what is this game-changing idea? It's right there in the title, Extreme Ownership. But what does it really mean? To truly get it, we need to return to that dark day in Ramadi. After the friendly fire incident, Jocko's career hung by a thread. Words spread like wildfire. His commanding officer was en route. An investigation launched. They were hunting for someone to blame, someone to fire. As Jocko prepared his debrief, he started listing everything that went wrong: the confusing plan, the missed communications, the individual mistakes made by soldiers and SEALs. The list of failures grew long. But something was missing. All these explanations didn't answer the most critical question: who was actually to blame? And then it crystallized. There was only one person to blame: himself. When he stood before his entire team, his commanding officer, and the investigator, the silence was suffocating. He asked the room directly, whose fault was this? One by one, his men stood up, ready to fall on their swords. The SEAL who pulled the trigger spoke first. "It was my fault. I should have positively identified my target." "No," Jocko cut him off. The radio man tried next. "It was my fault. I should have passed our position sooner." "Wrong," Jocko said firmly. More of his men prepared to take the blame. But he stopped them cold. "You know whose fault this is?" he asked the room. "There is only one person to blame for this: me. I am the commander. I am responsible for the entire operation. As the senior man, I am responsible for every single action that takes place on the battlefield. There is no one to blame but me." Let that sink in for a moment. He wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. He wasn't the one who failed to communicate. He wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he was the leader. And the leader owns everything. This is extreme ownership. It's not just taking responsibility for your own actions. It's taking responsibility for everything that impacts your mission. The plan, the training, the equipment, the team, even the weather. Everything. There's no one else to blame. When a leader truly embraces this mindset, something remarkable happens. Jocko expected to be fired. Instead, by taking complete ownership, he earned more trust and respect from both his superiors and his men than ever before. The blame game evaporated. The excuses disappeared. And in their place, a single question emerged: how do we fix this and make sure it never happens again? The entire team's culture shifted overnight. Instead of pointing fingers, they started solving problems. Because when the leader takes the blame, there's literally no one else to blame. Everyone's ego gets stripped away, and the team can focus on the only thing that actually matters: the mission. This principle that the leader owns everything leads directly to another profound lesson Jocko and Leif learned, not on the battlefield, but during the grueling training that forges a Navy SEAL Hell Week. Imagine you've been awake for over 3 days straight, with maybe an hour of sleep total. You're soaked to the bone, covered in sand that's chafing your skin raw, shivering from the relentless Pacific wind. Every muscle screams in agony. You and 6 other men are carrying a 200-pound inflatable rubber boat on your heads, running for miles along the beach, hauling it over massive sand berms and through punishing obstacle courses. This is BUD/S basic training for SEALs, and it's deliberately designed to find the men who refuse to quit no matter what. In this brutal environment, every single event is a race, and the instructors constantly shout the same refrain: "It pays to be a winner." Why? Because the boat crew that wins gets to rest for a few precious minutes, while the others keep suffering. And the boat crew that comes in last? They get special attention from the instructors, extra punishment, extra misery. During one Hell Week, the instructors noticed something fascinating. There was one boat crew 2, that was absolutely dominating. They won nearly every race. They worked together like a precision machine. Their leader was strong, every man on the team stayed motivated, and they took genuine pride in winning. Morale was sky high. And then there was Boat Crew 6. They came in dead last, every single time. They were a complete disaster. Instead of working together, they yelled and cursed at each other. Each man was trapped in his own misery, focused only on his personal pain. Their leader seemed defeated, as if he'd been dealt a bad hand with a team of underperformers. No matter what he tried, they were destined to fail. The senior SEAL instructor, an imposing figure who instilled fear in everyone, had an idea. He said, "Let's swap the boat crew leaders from the best and worst crews and see what happens." So they did exactly that. The leader of the winning team, Boat Crew 2, was sent to lead the losing team, Boat Crew 6. He wasn't thrilled about it, leaving his high-performing team to take over the worst crew in the class. Meanwhile, the leader of the losing team was ecstatic. He clearly thought he was finally getting the great team he deserved. In his mind, his old team's failure had nothing to do with him. The next race began. The instructors, and Leif Babin, who was an instructor at the time, watched as the boats paddled out into the dark ocean. Two boats pulled ahead, neck and neck, far ahead of the pack. As they returned to shore, the numbers on the boats became visible. Boat Crew 6, the perpetual losers, was leading. They won the race. And they didn't just win once. For the rest of that night, they were either first or second in every single race, battling for the top spot with Boat Crew 2. A miraculous transformation had occurred. The exact same group of men, in the exact same miserable conditions, had gone from worst to first. What changed? Only one thing: the leader. The new leader of Boat Crew 6 didn't make excuses. He didn't blame his men. He accepted reality. His team was failing, and it was his responsibility to turn it around. He believed they could win, and he got them to believe it too. He pulled them together, stopped the infighting, and focused their collective effort on one simple goal: winning the race. He set a new, higher standard and refused to tolerate anything less. Meanwhile, what happened to the winning team, Boat Crew 2, now led by the ineffective leader? They still performed well. Why? Because their original leader had already built a culture of winning. He'd taught every individual on that team what excellence looked like. They held each other accountable. They no longer needed him telling them what to do. The lesson was undeniable, and it's one of the most important in the entire book. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. If your team is failing, don't look at them. Look in the mirror. The leader's attitude is contagious. If the leader is negative and makes excuses, the team will mirror that negativity and make excuses. But if the leader takes ownership, believes in the mission, and refuses to accept anything less than high standards, the team will rise to meet them. This is a tough pill to swallow. It's so much easier to blame others, to point at circumstances beyond our control. But a true leader understands that when it comes to standards, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. If you accept poor performance, you'll get poor performance. If you demand excellence, your team will find a way to achieve it. But how do you get a team to believe in a mission that seems impossible or even foolish? This was precisely the challenge Jocko faced when he and his SEALs arrived in Ramadi. The orders from high command were crystal clear. Every single combat operation they conducted had to be done alongside Iraqi army soldiers. To the SEALs, this felt like an outrage. They were a world-class special operations unit, the absolute best of the best. They'd trained together for years, knew each other's every move, and trusted each other with their lives. Now they were being told they had to fight alongside Iraqi soldiers who were, for the most part, poorly trained, poorly equipped, unmotivated, and in some cases, of questionable loyalty. Taking them into a firefight seemed like suicide, a massive, self-inflicted disadvantage. The men were furious. Morale plummeted. They didn't believe in the mission. And Jocko, as their commander, secretly felt the same way. It made no sense whatsoever. But he knew that if he, as the leader, didn't believe, his men never would. The mission would be doomed before it even started. So he forced himself to step back from the tactical details and look at the strategic big picture. He asked himself a simple question: why? Why would the top generals in the U.S. military order this? They weren't stupid. They wanted to win just as badly as he did. So what did winning in Iraq actually look like? It wasn't about a peace treaty or formal surrender. It was about creating a stable, secure country that could defend itself. And who was going to defend it? The Iraqi army. If the U.S. military didn't train them, who would? The answer became clear. Americans would be stuck there for generations. Their sons and their sons' sons would be fighting this same fight. Suddenly, the mission clicked into focus. The Iraqi soldiers weren't a liability. They were the path to victory. They were the ticket home. But there was another piece to it. The Iraqi army might never be as good as the SEALs, but they didn't have to be. They just needed to be good enough to handle whatever enemy remained. So the SEALs had a two-part mission. First, build up the Iraqi forces, and second, hammer the insurgency so hard, break their capability so completely, that the Iraqi army could handle what was left. And how could they get out into the city to hammer the insurgency? They needed mission approval from higher command. What was the one requirement for getting that approval? Taking Iraqi soldiers with them on every operation. The Iraqi soldiers weren't just the long-term solution. They were the short-term key to getting into the fight. With this new understanding, Jocko genuinely believed in the mission. Now he had to get his men to believe. He gathered them together and laid it all out, answering the simple question they all had: why? He explained the strategic picture. He explained that if they didn't get these Iraqi soldiers up to speed, the U.S. military would be stuck in Iraq forever. He explained that the Iraqis were their ticket to getting off the base and into the fight. The men didn't have to like it, but they had to understand it. And once they understood the why, they could believe in the mission. When a team truly believes, they can overcome any obstacle and persevere through any hardship. This brings us to one of the biggest obstacles any leader will ever face: their own ego. Leadership isn't about being the best. It's not about being the smartest person in the room or getting all the credit. It's about the mission. And sometimes, the biggest threat to the mission is the leader's own ego. As Task Unit Bruiser racked up unprecedented success in Ramadi, other special operations units wanted in on the action. One such unit arrived at Camp Corregidor, a small, dusty combat outpost in one of the most dangerous parts of the city. This new unit had a reputation for being elite. They worked with a highly trained group of Iraqi soldiers who had the best gear and weapons. The SEAL platoon commander stationed there, called Jocko, worried. "These guys are good," he said. "Maybe better than us. I'm worried they'll take over our mission." His ego felt threatened. He was tempted to let the new unit figure things out on their own, a potentially deadly mistake in a place like Ramadi. Jocko's response was immediate and clear. "The enemy is outside the wire," he said. "These new guys are on our team. You do whatever you can to help them. If they outperform you and take your mission, good. We'll find another one. Our mission is to defeat the insurgency. We can't let our egos get in the way of that." The SEAL platoon commander immediately put his ego in check. The mission was what mattered. Unfortunately, the new unit didn't share that mindset. Some of their members carried themselves with obvious arrogance. They flaunted relaxed grooming standards on a base run by a highly disciplined Army colonel who demanded professionalism. They talked down to battle-hardened soldiers who'd been fighting there for months. Worst of all, when the SEALs tried sharing life-saving lessons they'd learned from weeks of sustained combat in that exact sector, the new unit brushed off their advice. Their ego told them they were too good to learn from anyone else. They refused to coordinate their mission plans, keeping critical details about their locations and timelines secret. This wasn't just arrogant, it was catastrophically dangerous. In an environment with so many friendly forces and so many enemy fighters, a lack of coordination was a recipe for disaster. Within 2 weeks, the Army colonel ordered the unit off his base. Their impressive capabilities meant nothing because their egos made them impossible to work with. They had become a liability to the team and the mission. Ego clouds and disrupts everything. It prevents you from taking good advice, from accepting constructive criticism, and from admitting when you're wrong. A leader must be humble, keep their ego in check, and operate with genuine humility. When personal agendas become more important than the team and the mission, failure becomes inevitable. Once a leader has their ego in check, understands their why, and takes ownership, they can begin applying the tactical principles that lead to victory. Jocko and Leif call these the laws of combat, but you don't have to be in combat to use them. These are fundamental principles of teamwork and execution in any field. The first law is cover and move. It's the most fundamental tactic there is. It means teamwork. Simply put, one part of the team provides covering fire while the other part moves. Then they switch roles. This way, the team can advance on an enemy position or retreat from one, while always protecting each other. No one moves alone. No one is left exposed. On one operation, Leif Babin was leading a SEAL sniper team, Observation Post 2, deep in enemy territory. They were providing overwatch for an Army search operation. Another SEAL team, Observation Post 1, was set up in a different building a few hundred meters away, covering another flank. When the Army mission wrapped up, both SEAL teams needed to get back to their base, Combat Outpost Falcon. Leif's position, Observation Post 2, was tactically vulnerable. Waiting until nightfall was risky. The enemy knew where they were and would likely mount a major attack. He decided the least bad option was moving back to the base on foot, in broad daylight. It was dangerous, but he believed it beat being a sitting duck. As he focused on his own team's dilemma, getting packed, planning the route, briefing his men, he got a radio call from Observation Post 1. They were pulling out too. Leif thought little of it, his mind consumed by the immediate problem in front of him. Leif's team moved out, and, just as expected, all hell broke loose. Insurgents attacked from the rear with a furious barrage of machine gun fire. The SEALs responded instantly, executing a flawless centerpeel maneuver, a coordinated tactic where they laid down withering fire while bounding back to cover. They were a well-oiled machine. They repulsed the attack and made it back to base without a scratch. They were fired up. It was a successful gunfight. But when they got back, their platoon chief wasn't celebrating. "What the hell were you guys doing out there?" he asked sternly. "Why didn't you leave Observation Post 1 in place to cover your movement back?" In that moment, Leif realized his mistake. He'd become so laser-focused on his own team's problem that he'd completely forgotten about the bigger team. He'd violated the first law of combat: cover and move. Had Observation Post 1 stayed in their elevated sniper position, they could have provided covering fire for Leif's team as they moved through those dangerous streets. Then, once Leif's team was safely back at base, they could have covered Observation Post 1's movement. They were all on the same team, fighting the same enemy. But they'd acted like two separate units. They got lucky, but it was foolish and needlessly risky. In any team, in any business, this happens constantly. Departments get siloed. They become so focused on their own tasks that they forget they're part of a bigger team with a shared mission. They start competing with each other instead of supporting each other. It's the leader's job to constantly remind the team that they must all cover and move for one another. If the overall team fails, everyone fails. The focus must always be on how to best accomplish the mission together. The second law of combat is simple. Combat is inherently complex and chaotic. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. The more complex a plan is, the more opportunities exist for it to break down. Therefore, plans and orders must be simple, clear, and concise. Jocko tells the story of a U.S. Army lieutenant, a military transition team leader, who was excited to lead his first patrol in Ramadi. He and his Iraqi soldiers were going to conduct a quote-quote presence patrol to show locals that coalition forces were there to stay. The lieutenant briefed Jocko on his plan. It was a masterpiece of complexity. The route snaked for nearly 2 kilometers through some of the most hostile territory in Iraq, crossing through areas controlled by 3 different American units, 2 Army and 1 Marine. The communications plan was a tangled web of different radio networks. The logistics of carrying enough water and ammunition for such a long trek were a nightmare. Jocko listened patiently. Then he said, "Lieutenant, I appreciate your motivation, but perhaps we need to simplify this a little bit." The lieutenant was incredulous. "It's just a patrol. How complex can it get?" Jocko knew the young leader couldn't grasp the dangers until he experienced them firsthand. He gently explained the risks, the IEDs that would prevent armored vehicles from reaching them if they got pinned down, the nightmare of coordinating with 3 different units in the middle of a firefight. He convinced the lieutenant to agree to a much shorter, simpler route, just a few hundred meters out and back, all within the battle space of a single army company. 12 minutes after the patrol stepped outside the gate, the shooting started. A massive firefight erupted. Radio calls became broken and jumbled. 2 soldiers were wounded. They needed immediate evacuation and fire support. Because the plan was simple, the chaos was manageable. The patrol was in a known location. They were on a single radio network. The SEAL sniper team providing overwatch knew exactly where they were and could cover them. Jocko could quickly coordinate with the Army company commander to send in tanks and an armored ambulance. They got the wounded out and beat back the enemy attack. But Jocko knew that if the patrol had been executing their original, complex plan, deep in enemy territory, out of radio range, in another unit's battle space, it would have been a catastrophe. They likely all would have been killed. The lesson is this: in any high-stakes environment, simplicity is crucial. When things go wrong, and they will, a simple plan is something everyone can understand and adapt to. A complex plan just adds to the confusion and compounds the disaster. As a leader, it doesn't matter how brilliant your plan is if your team doesn't understand it. You must brief so clearly that the most junior person on the team gets it. The third law of combat is prioritize and execute. Even the most competent leader can be overwhelmed if they try tackling multiple problems simultaneously. When chaos erupts, a leader must stay calm, detach from the immediate emotional reaction, and make a call. Which problem is the highest priority? Which one will kill us first? Leif Babin found himself in precisely this situation, trapped in a hornet's nest, deep inside enemy territory. His SEAL platoon had taken over a 4-story apartment building and had been in a running gun battle all day. As night fell, they prepared to leave. But there was a problem. Their explosive ordnance disposal technicians discovered a massive IED planted right at their only exit. They had to find another way out. They used a sledgehammer to smash a hole through a concrete wall onto the rooftop of the 1-story building next door. But as they began moving across the rooftop in the darkness, one of their SEALs crashed through what he thought was solid ground but was actually a dusty tarp covering a hole. He fell 20 feet to the street below, groaning in pain. The situation spiraled. They were exposed on a wide-open rooftop, surrounded by higher buildings in the heart of enemy territory. The clock was ticking on the explosive charge they'd set to detonate the IED at their original exit. One of their men was down, and they couldn't reach him. It was a leader's worst nightmare. Multiple urgent, life-threatening problems all at once. What do? Leif fell back on his training. Prioritize and execute. He had to relax, look around, and make a call. What was the highest priority? It wasn't getting to the wounded man, as much as every fiber of his being wanted to. It was security. If they didn't defend their position, they'd all be killed, and then they couldn't help anyone. "Set security!" he yelled. Immediately, SEALs took up covering positions, their machine guns ready to engage any threat. Priority 1, handled. What was the next priority? Getting off the exposed rooftop and down to their wounded teammate. A SEAL breacher was called forward to break through a locked iron gate blocking the stairwell to the street. Priority 2, in motion. Next priority, ensuring a full head count to make sure everyone was out of the original building before the IED exploded. The leading petty officer, calm amidst the chaos, confirmed everyone was out. Priority 3, handled. Within minutes, the breacher was through the gate. They moved down to the street, recovered their wounded man, who had luckily landed on his rucksack and was shaken but not seriously injured, and moved to a safe distance. And then, boom, the IED detonated in a massive fireball, sending shrapnel raining down for a full city block. By methodically tackling one problem at a time, in order of priority, Leif had turned a potential catastrophe into a controlled, successful extraction. This is a critical skill for any leader. When you feel overwhelmed, don't try doing everything at once. Step back. Assess. Determine the single most important thing you need to do, and focus all your energy on that. Then, once that's in motion, move to the next priority. Relax, look around, make a call. The fourth and final law of combat is decentralized command. A single leader cannot manage everything. Human beings generally aren't capable of managing more than 6 to 10 people, especially when things go sideways. To be effective, teams must be broken down into smaller, manageable elements, each with a clearly designated leader. And those junior leaders must be empowered to make decisions. This is decentralized command. It doesn't mean everyone does whatever they want. It means the senior leader's job is ensuring everyone, down to the most junior person, understands the overall mission and the commander's intent, the why behind the mission. Once they understand that, they can be trusted to make decisions and execute on the front lines without asking permission for every little thing. The frontline leaders are on the ground. They have the best understanding of the immediate situation. They must be empowered to lead. Jocko's platoon commanders didn't ask him, "What should I do?" They told him, "This is what I'm going to do." This level of trust, up and down the chain of command, is what allows a team to be fast, flexible, and adaptable. The necessity of this was proven during one of the largest operations in Ramadi. SEAL teams were in position, and hundreds of Army and Marine forces were flooding into the area. The fog of war was thick. A report came over the radio from a Bradley fighting vehicle. "We've got armed enemy fighters on top of a building, appear to be snipers." Everyone tensed up. Enemy snipers were a nightmare. The Army company commander was ready to engage. "Let's hammer these guys," he said. But Jocko was co-located with him, monitoring the situation. He knew one of his SEAL sniper team's Delta platoon was in that area. He asked for the building number. Building 79, came the reply. Jocko checked his map. His SEALs were in Building 94. Negative, he told the captain. My guys are in 94, not 79. All right then, let's engage, the captain said again, eager to take out the threat. But something still didn't sit right with Jocko. The urban landscape was confusing. Mistakes were easy to make. He had to be absolutely sure. He asked the captain to do him a favor. Just to confirm, have your Bradley vehicle commander count the number of buildings from the intersection up to where he sees the enemy. The captain was frustrated. Every second they waited, that enemy sniper could be killing one of his soldiers. But he trusted Jocko. He relayed the order. There was a long pause on the radio. Too long. Finally, the voice came back, somber. Correction. The suspected enemy position is Building 94. I say again, 94. Hold your fire, the captain commanded, his voice filled with authority and alarm. The enemy snipers were their own SEALs. The Bradley crew had misjudged the distance and misidentified the building. If Jocko had been micromanaging his teams, buried in the tactical details of their positions, he might have missed that critical radio call. He might not have had the situational awareness to ask that one simple, clarifying question that prevented a catastrophic friendly fire incident. But because he practiced decentralized command, he trusted his platoon commanders to lead their teams. This freed him up to focus on the bigger strategic picture, to coordinate with other units, and to be the final backstop against disaster. He empowered his junior leaders, and in doing so, he made the entire team stronger, safer, and more effective. The lessons don't stop there. Once you've mastered these principles, the final challenge is sustaining victory. This requires a deep understanding of balance, of what Jocko and Leif call the dichotomy of leadership. Leading isn't about being one-dimensional. It's about balancing opposing forces. A leader must be confident, but not cocky, courageous, but not foolhardy, attentive to details, but not obsessed by them. A leader must be strong, but also have endurance, humble, but not passive, quiet, but not silent. A leader must be close with their troops, but not so close that they forget who's in charge, or that one person becomes more important than the mission. This was a lesson one CEO had to learn the hard way. His company had an electrical division that was losing money, month after month. The CFO told him they had to shut it down. It was bleeding the company dry. But the CEO, Andy, couldn't do it. The head of that division, Mike, was an old and dear friend. He was loyal. Andy's loyalty, normally his greatest strength as a leader, had become his greatest weakness. He was so close to Mike that he was willing to jeopardize the financial stability of the entire company and the jobs of all his other employees to protect his friend. Jocko asked him a simple, cutting question. So, one of your men is more important than the mission? The truth hit Andy hard. He'd lost his balance. He was leaning too far in one direction. A leader's job isn't easy. Sometimes it requires making brutally hard decisions. Like the sailors in World War II who had to seal a flooded compartment to save the ship, even though they knew their friends were trapped inside. They had the discipline to make the toughest call for the good of the entire team. Andy needed that same discipline. He shut down the division. And to his surprise, his friend Mike understood completely. Their friendship remained intact, and the company was saved. This is the ultimate challenge of leadership. It's not a checklist. It's a constant balancing act. The most important quality is having the humility to know when you're out of balance and the discipline to correct your course. And that brings us to the final and perhaps most powerful idea in the book. It's a simple mantra that Jocko lives by: discipline equals freedom. This seems like a contradiction. Discipline is about rules, control, and structure. Freedom is about the absence of restrictions. But they're two sides of the same coin. The discipline to wake up early gives you the freedom of more time in your day. The discipline to work out every day gives you the freedom of a strong, healthy body. The discipline to manage your money gives you the freedom of financial security. For a team, the discipline of having standardized procedures gives them the freedom to be fast, flexible, and creative. When everyone knows the fundamental plan, they can adapt and improvise without creating chaos. When things go wrong, they don't have to wonder what to do. They can fall back on their discipline training. Discipline is the pathway to freedom. And it all starts with the simplest test of all. The moment your alarm clock goes off in the morning, do you get up or do you hit snooze? That first decision sets the tone for the rest of your day. If you have the discipline to win that first battle, you're on the path to winning them all. When you strip it all down, extreme ownership is about one thing: taking control. It's about rejecting the victim mentality that's so easy to fall into. The world is complex and often unfair. It's tempting to blame your boss, your teachers, your teammates, or just bad luck for your failures. But what does that accomplish? It leaves you powerless. It makes you a passive observer in your own life. What Jocko Willink and Leif Babin learned in the streets of Ramadi is that the only way to win, in combat, in business, in life, is to take ownership of your world. All of it. The most powerful lesson in this book isn't some complex leadership theory. It's the gut-wrenchingly simple idea that if you want something to be better, it starts with you. If your team is failing, it's because you failed to lead them. If you don't understand the mission, it's because you failed to ask questions. If your boss isn't giving you the support you need, it's because you failed to communicate and lead up the chain of command. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being humble. It's about having the courage to look in the mirror and say, "This is on me. How do I fix it?" That's where true power lies. The moment you stop blaming others is the moment you reclaim the power to change your circumstances. For a young person on the verge of adulthood, this mindset is everything. Your life from this point forward will be a series of challenges. Some will be small, like a difficult project at school. Others will be immense, involving your career, your family, and your future. There will be uncertainty. There will be chaos. Things will not go according to plan. You have a choice. You can let those challenges overwhelm you, or you can meet them with extreme ownership. So how do you start? You don't need to be leading a SEAL team. You can start today, right where you are. First, the next time you face a problem or failure, a bad grade, a missed opportunity, a conflict with a friend, stop yourself from making an excuse, just for a moment. Instead, ask yourself one question: what could I have done differently to get a better outcome? It might be small. Maybe you could have studied more. Maybe you could have communicated better. Maybe you could have been more prepared. Find one thing you can own. Second, start with discipline. Pick one small thing. Wake up 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. Don't hit the snooze button. Just get up. Win that first battle. That small victory will build momentum. It proves to yourself that you're in control. And finally, remember the dichotomy of leadership. Life is about balance. Be confident, but stay humble. Be aggressive in pursuing your goals, but be willing to listen and follow when someone else has a better idea. Understand that true strength isn't about never failing. It's about owning your failures and learning from them. That was a summary of Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. We've journeyed through the core ideas today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you make the journey yourself. The true power of this book isn't just in the principles, but in the raw, visceral stories that bring them to life. This summary is designed to give you a compass, to help you decide if this journey is for you. If anything we've talked about today has struck a chord, if you feel that call to take more control of your life, then I genuinely encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning concepts. It's an experience that can fundamentally change the way you see yourself and the world around you. Link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the ideas that shape the most successful people in the world, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.